Guys, gals, welcome to the show. We've got some big news today. Normally I do something stupid at the beginning of the video, but not today because we have got a big hurricane brewing south of Cuba right now, and that is Hurricane Matthew. Matthew is up to some trouble, some serious trouble right now. He went from a category like 2 to a category 4 in a very short amount of time. I mean, we're talking a really short amount of time. And a lot of people didn't even think this would ever approach category 4. A lot of the projections were maybe category 2 or category 3. So I'm going to talk about how this is happening. This cat is causing problems, okay? So we're going to dive deep into Matthew's guts. Will it hit the United States? That is the big question, and I'm going to address that question throughout this video. I'm also going to talk about Hurricane Matthew's strength. Will it get stronger? Will it stay the same? I'm also going to go over a couple of forecasting techniques. Some of these you can use right along with me, okay, including something called the Model Sanity test. But we're going to keep it simple and understandable so anyone can do it. So who is this video for? This is for weather enthusiasts and people that want to track Hurricane Matthew. This is not for people who are looking for hypey, dumbed-down forecast that you would see on news stations and stuff. So a little disclaimer there. So let's crack right into this episode of State of the Weather Address. All right, guys, so here's Matthew currently just north of the South America coastline here. It's a category 4 with winds of 150 miles per hour. This strengthened rapidly today. And this is currently from the National Hurricane Center. And what do they think? Well, they think this thing is going to track to the west just a little bit longer through Saturday and Sunday. And it's just going to go crazy north, pretty crazy fast here. And it's going to hit Jamaica, and it's going to go through Cuba. Now, there's some indication this could actually be a little bit further west. It could pound Jamaica. So this is something that is not good. Okay, it's not good. And so it's going to have to be watched closely. Jamaica is currently under a hurricane watch. This is the current satellite from the University of Wisconsin. I'll post the links that I use so you can use them along with me in the description below this video. So this is from Wisconsin. And just today, just over the past few hours, we've developed an eye, a pretty distinguishable eye. I mean, it kind of was there, but look at that, boom, right there. It really has begun to develop, and that is a very good sign that this is a strengthening hurricane. You got plenty of convection out here blowing up and really starting to begin to feed into this hurricane. Plenty of spiraling happening. A little bit of dry air down here, but again, you got a lot of convection there. This thing is really looking good right now and is strengthening at a crazy rate. Here's the infrared. This is from NASA. NASA has a lot of good websites. And yeah, we're talking about rather intense cold clouds up here. I guess red's not the best color to use here. But yeah, you get the general picture and a very distinct eye on that, and some more convection out here blowing up, as you can tell. This thing will probably strengthen a little bit more if it continues to do that. This is the current radar right now. Not the best quality, but that's what we got right now out there. As this gets closer to the United States, we'll probably have better radars if it gets close enough. So we'll see what happens there. All right, guys, so another cool tool to use is from Intellicast. This is a satellite from Intellicast. Again, I'll post the links below. But this is a satellite overlaid Google Maps, so you can kind of move around and zoom in and all that, so it's kind of cool. You can clearly see Hurricane Hermine right here, nice eye wall. And let's just draw out that track. That track was kind of like this, if I remember right. And so we can kind of look at the geographic features that may impact this hurricane. And we can really get a good idea of where this is actually at with the city labels and the geographic features, okay? So something interesting to watch here is the hurricanes around here, if I looked at that map right, it's in kind of cooler waters right now, you know, warmer than usual, but it's in a little bit of a cooler water area, but it's forecasted to go into a very warm water area, and this is just kind of showing the temperatures and the amount of warm temperatures in the ocean here, okay? So it's very possible that this hurricane could strengthen even more, and there actually looks to be less shear farther north into Cuba as well. So this hurricane could strengthen to a higher end Category 4 and perhaps a Category 5. But just as this thing begins to strengthen kind of in this area where I'd expect that to happen, you're going to start dealing with mountains, not only in Jamaica, but also in parts of Cuba as well. And those mountains can create dry air entrainment, where dry air comes down that mountain and kind of screws with the hurricane. It kind of brings in some drier air. So the hurricane could actually weaken when it goes kind of over this area. And the waters actually also begin to kind of cool off as we go farther north. So I don't know that by the time this thing's near Florida, it will be a Category 4 or not. It's a little bit too far out to say on that. But I do think it'll be a very respectable hurricane when it gets north of Cuba. And so we'll have to watch that closely. It's still several days out. But those mountains, how does that affect the hurricane? How does it interact with this land in warm waters? That will be the question. And how much wind shear above will there be? Alrighty, it's that moment we've been waiting for, the computer models. This is a Hurricane Matthew. Hurricane Matthew. Hermine was that last one that kind of came through. Hurricane Matthew right here, Category 3. This was taken a little bit earlier. It's actually a little bit further west, and it's a Category 4 now. That's where it's at. And this is all of the computer models put on a map, and you can see there's a ton of them right now. And this is kind of the average track of these models. So it kind of looks like the Hurricane Center's forecast. So the average track's kind of somewhere in this area right here-ish. These models out here are pretty crazy. These things are called outliers. Probably not going to happen, but it is weather, so it can do whatever it's want. You never know. You can't totally discount them. But it's probably going to be somewhere in that cone. That's what we want to watch. Now, there's something interesting that might happen, and it's this. Anything past this line, really, anything past about a week out, I would say that's probably getting close to 5 to 7 days out. Really hard to judge its accuracy, okay? This is the area we got to watch up here. This could still change quite a bit. Once models get past about 5 to 7 days, and especially around 240 hours out, which is, I think, even further, maybe up in this area, the models really have a lot of trouble. So there's still a lot of uncertainty in that circled area right there. Current guess is that it'll probably be on the western side of this track just a little bit, because some of the better models are on the western side for hurricane forecasting. But I think it'll remain just east of Florida. Okay, but it'll be close to watch. It's definitely not out of the woods. They might get some of the edge of the hurricane or the tropical storm, but it'll be close to watch. It's still a little bit far out. But it's that area I circled up there. We're going to really have to watch. All right, this is the GFS, and it does particularly well with tropical storms sometimes, especially this one right now. GFS has been the most consistent. This is the GFS. This is from pivotalweather.com, and this is currently, and I think this is underestimating the hurricane currently pretty bad, but the track's at least a little bit better. This is going into about Monday morning. Around Monday morning, between Monday morning and Monday afternoon, the GFS has this making landfall on the Jamaica area right here. And it looks like it strengthens quite a bit, at least from where it was. And so I would imagine that the next run's going to look even stronger, just because this model run was kind of taken before the big uptick in the hurricane strength. So we'll see what happens there. It'll be kind of interesting. But it takes it right on the east side of Jamaica, okay? But this thing is still pounding Jamaica pretty hard, so that's definitely kind of a scary sight there. Let's continue the track here. We'll track it, okay, maybe not there. All right, we'll track it north. It hits Cuba on Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning, late Monday night. It really begins to speed up once it gets north of Jamaica. And then it gets close to Florida. Look how close that gets. I mean, that is as close as you can get, really. And that happens around Thursday and Friday, and that tracks farther up the coast. And I'm going to go into a wider view here. This is from meteostar.com, And I'll post that link below as well. This is the GFS, and it shows the depth of moisture, the surface winds, and the pressure. We're going to advance a little bit further and see what happens up the east coast of the United States. This thing rides the east coast, literally just rides the entire east coast about as close as you can get. I mean, just like this, as close as you can get without actually making landfall. So this is going to be something we really got to watch, because any slight shift, and you talk about a dramatic increase in hazard potential. The latest GFS actually has this slamming up in the New England area towards Maine, especially towards Maine. But it starts to weaken up there. The waters are cooler. A trough interacts with it, so it begins to weaken. So I'm not overly concerned about that area yet. The main area is probably going to be the Carolinas up through Pennsylvania area. That's probably going to be the area I really want to watch right now. Florida's definitely not out of the woods yet, but I think it'll probably scrape Florida. This is the vorticity at 500 millibars for our hurricane here, and this is where it's at. When you get a closed off, nice little bubble of vorticity like that, circular, that usually means it's pretty strong. And so let's track this into the future a little bit. Actually, first, let's what I like to do first is I like to point out all the big weather features. Okay, so over here we got a little bit of a trough, okay, kind of in this area. We got a high pressure area out here, Bermuda High, sitting out in the Atlantic Ocean. What they like to do, what hurricanes like to do, is they like to track into the weakness, which means kind of in between the lows and the highs, okay? And that's kind of what is forecasted. So they want to stay away, and they like to go around high pressure systems, okay? And then with these little troughs, they kind of like to go around them, or sometimes they'll get sucked into the troughs as well. So, but those things will move, as you can see. So the trough's beginning to move east. High pressure just kind of sitting there. It's moving east a little bit as well. And here comes Hurricane Matthew. It weakens a little bit as it crosses Jamaica, then re-strengthens again. It really begins to re-strengthen as it crosses Cuba and looks pretty doggone good. Now, let's look at our upper air here. We got a little bit of a ridge now out in the eastern United States. We got a high pressure system out here. The hurricane looks to track somewhere in between that, probably somewhere kind of in this area, and that's kind of what the models are showing. So that looks about right. So let's continue it. But notice this now, okay, as we get close to Florida, the weakness is kind of in this area right here. But look what's brewing out to the west, another trough. There's got another little trough coming in here. And that's going to really determine whether this hurricane kind of goes to the east or not. It's going to kind of affect it. We'll see what happens here. And the latest run, I think, kind of diminished the trough's intensity a little bit. But notice what happens. This thing isn't closed off anymore. It's not just a hurricane. It kind of gets sucked into the jet stream now. And that's what's going to kind of screw with it. It's going to start to weaken after that. As you can tell, boom, right there. It's inside the trough as it hits the main area. So we'll see what happens. Boom, right there. It still could be a very powerful storm system, but probably not a high-end hurricane or anything close to that. But that'll depend on the trough's placement. If this trough ends up weakening a little bit and just kind of staying north, and there's not a lot of wind shear for this thing could be pretty strong, and it also could track onto the East Coast. So we'll have to watch that. Now, one thing I like to use to forecast or to examine the model's confidence, this is the GFS we've been looking at, how sane is this model, is something I call the model sanity test. Okay, this, again, shows how confident the model is. And I've gone over this in other videos, like my previous video, I did a more in-depth tutorial. We're just going to briefly go over it. This is the 500, or excuse me, this is the, these rings represent where low pressure systems of 996 millibars lie, or lower lie. Okay, so this represents where low pressure systems lie. And what this is it's a bunch of different runs of the GFS, but what they did is they changed the initial conditions just a little bit, or the physics just a little bit, to see, okay, to ask the question, okay, if the weather that was ingested into this model, you know, they take all the surface observations and upper air, if it was just slightly inaccurate, would the hurricane or would the 996 millibar lows change much? And if it does change much over time, then the model is very sensitive to real-time weather data, okay? And probably means it's not going to be very accurate very far out. If it doesn't change much, if there's a lot of confidence, then it will. There's a little bit more confidence in the model. And so all of these runs represent a different area of that 996. You can see them all popping up here. They're relatively confident when they're close together like that, but when they start to spread apart, that means the model is starting to lose sanity. It's starting to go crazy. It's starting to get a little bit drunk. So let's advance it forward. This is about a day out here. As you can see, it's south of Jamaica. Relatively good confidence. Okay, if these things get larger, they could mean the 996 millibar lows larger. If they're smaller, it means the low is smaller. So you can judge size, intensity, location, all that type of stuff with this. So let's advance into the future. Still a lot of confidence. It's going to go right over Jamaica or Cuba now on I believe that's Tuesday. You can see some say it's going to be slower, some is going to be faster, larger, smaller. We'll advance it forward. Still generally a lot of confidence here. Southeast of Florida. We'll go into the future, and man, it starts to break apart right here. This is 156 hours in advance, which is next Friday or next Thursday night. You see there's wide variation. Some of the members of the GFS say it's going to be out there. Some say it's going to be on Florida. So what you can really do is say, hey, when should I stop, trusting this model? And this is right around that point, because there is a pretty big gap in the amount of confidence in this model here, and that's 156 hours out. See, it's generally confident there, and then just starts to really spread apart. Look how ridiculous that gets. I mean, that's like anywhere along the East Coast now, or east of there. So right around 156 hours out, which is next Friday, it's going to be hard to really gauge the confidence of this model, which is kind of generally in this area. So anything north of there, that's why I circled that area, because we really don't know yet. This model's very far out, and look at that, it just goes nuts after that. So that's a little technique you can use for that. Now that was just the GFS we were looking at. There's other models to look at. We'll just briefly go over the European model, what it says, and we'll look at the Canadian model, okay? So this is the European computer model. Let me back it up to where it starts, to current conditions. This is from Tropical Tidbits. They make some nice models and analysis data for hurricanes as well. So this is for 120 hours out. This is Wednesday, I believe. It tracks it north of Cuba, but notice what the European does. It gets it really close to Florida there, but it really shoots it west, and in fact, or east. It really pops it east, and it kind of just lollygags out there. This is 240 hours out. That's next Monday. The GFS 240 hours out was like up in Maine. So, I mean, there are some pretty huge differences in that track there. This is some of the Euros just all of a sudden been doing. It's just been kind of wobbling it around here. So we'll see if that happens or not. But again, around 156 to 240 hours, it's really hard to tell this far out. Alrighty, so we'll look at one more model. This is the Canadian model, okay, and we'll kind of zoom in on this one. Let's go back to what it shows right now. It has the hurricane right here. It actually is probably stronger than what it says. Kind of weakens it, kind of pulses it, but you can see it tracking north, and this model kind of moves with the hurricane, so that's kind of cool. This again from Tropical Tidbits. The Canadian model has this thing going on western Jamaica. Remember the other models were further east. Now this one's a little bit further west. has a pretty good hurricane going up Jamaica, right into the heart of Jamaica, into Cuba as well. Then it tracks it due north. It kind of flirts with the coast of Florida, but then it really pushes it to the east after that. This is 132 hours out, which is Thursday. Let's see when it hits landfall of Cuba. Hits landfall in Cuba around Monday night into Tuesday. Okay, and then this tracks it right up the east coast, just to the to the east. It does mess with the east coast a little bit in the Carolinas. This is 162 hours out. And then it tracks it farther northeast than the GFS. And then it kind of tracks into the Nova Scotia area. So the Canadian model looks to be it starts off a little bit farther west than the GFS, then it ends up a little bit further east. The European is kind of wacky right now, and the GFS tracks it right up just to the east of the coast and hits Maine. So it's going to be a close call here on what happens. Alrighty guys, so that about sums up today's video of Hurricane Matthew. And if you like these videos and you want more of these videos, forecast videos, and if you want to further your weather forecasting skills and receive weather forecasting tutorials, go ahead and subscribe wherever that subscribe button is. It'll send out some more of these videos. And so go ahead and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you soon.